Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you on this hot, humid Tuesday morning in Boston. And the first two pieces of mail, well, I was happy to see them, of course, but they were bittersweet. It was a bittersweet happiness. The first one is The Nation. You may remember just a little while ago, I took you on, made a video about a trip I did to the bookstore in which I saw a couple of magazines that struck me as interesting. I was going through the Barnes & Noble here in Boston has a huge newsstand. I was going through the magazines saying, what's worth my money here? And I was flipping through these news magazines, the front half of which is usually depressing, but the back half of which is usually well-paid books coverage. And I grabbed The Nation because I thought, isn't that interesting? And I got it in the mail because I apparently, at some point in the distant past, found it so interesting that I subscribed to it. So that was a little embarrassing because you don't like to forget such a thing and get a magazine in the mail that you just bought at Barnes & Noble. I also subscribed to the New Republic. I quite forgot about that fact in between the arrival of the last issue and the arrival of this issue in the mail today. So I have 2 copies of those to remind me that flesh is fallible, I guess. But fortunately, 2 of the periodicals that I got weren't duplicates. The first one is the Martha's Vineyard Gazette, this old-style broadsheet newspaper from the island of Martha's Vineyard. Look at that picture on the cover. There's a dog on the prow of a vessel just looking at the water. You can't really tell on my camera setup, but that's an incredibly beautiful black and white photo. And incredibly beautiful black and white photos run throughout the Vineyard Gazette. It's amazing, all the way to the back. And you will have original photos of garden items, or especially birds, that are part of the columns at the back. Another feature of the Vineyard Gazette that will sometimes be there for your reading delectation will be me. It will be yours truly. I write book reviews for the Vineyard Gazette, and that is true in this issue, where we have, once again, another beautiful picture. It's a beautiful picture. Look at how beautiful that is. But also a review by me of Forget Prayers, Bring Cake, a self-published book about grieving, about grief and losing someone, that does an amazingly non-confrontational job of dispensing with the dumb hallmark pieties of grieving that are, if anything, usually a hindrance when you're trying to get through grief instead of a help. I would, of course, ideally wish that no one in the world would ever go through deep grief. Those of you who have been through it will know what I'm talking about. It's not the same thing as losing a distant grandparent. Deep grief, where all the light in your life goes out, as Theodore Roosevelt put it. I wish that I could hand a copy of this book to every person who's gone through that, just to help them. So it was a delight to get. It was a delight to review, and I also got the new Harper's, which I'm now very happy that I did not buy at Barnes & Noble, since I was expecting I probably would have. And this has an excerpt from John le Carré's new novel, the largely finished, fully formed novel that le Carré apparently was working on when he died, and that his son, the novelist Nick Harkaway, brought to its finished form, alleging that he had to do very, very little. The excerpt here is not. I've read Silverview, and the excerpt here is not what I was expecting. I was sort of, when I was reading it, it's not a long thing at all. I was kind of thinking, well, somebody's going to do this. Somebody's going to excerpt something. If it's not New York Times Magazine, it'll be Harper's or Atlantic or something like that. I was trying to pick the section that would be excerpted, and this is not the one that I would have picked. But the main attraction is at the back. The main attraction is the new book section, because all the way to the back of the issue, instead of highlighted, let's see, is it highlighted at all? Yes. It's mentioned at the bottom of the cover. The very last thing on the cover is the mention of Alan Jacobs giving his 4,000-word review to Jonathan Franzen's new novel, Crossroads. So this is the second venue that I have seen that has an enormous review of this book that they're not really talking all that much about. And I'm watching the placement of these reviews, because when Jonathan Franzen's last novel came out, it was a radically different world. an author who had been in a public fight with Oprah Winfrey, an author who had been dubbed by a major weekly newspaper magazine as the greatest American living novelist, an author who has many, many book introductions and whatnot. When Jonathan Franzen came out with his last novel, it was just accepted that if all of those things are true about you, you are in fact a major author, and therefore no publication has to apologize in any way, either upfront or preemptively, about giving your new novel lots of attention. Crossroads is the first Jonathan Franzen novel in a long time, many years. When Franzen's last book came out, no one would have needed to apologize or prepare an apology for giving the new Jonathan Franzen novel as much attention as you can possibly get. And times have changed. And times have changed mainly in one index above all others, and that one index has driven all of the others. And that is that we in the 21st century now live in an openly racist age. An age when if your racism is the right kind, then you are free to state it at a job interview, for Pete's sake. You're free to put it in your wedding vows. You don't have to hide it anymore. The way in the mid-century, in most parts, especially of the Northeast in America, even full-blown, full-out racists usually had to hide it. That's where the whole urban idea of the drunken uncle at holiday comes from, right? Where everything's normal, everything's burbling along just fine, but at the holidays, there's one uncle who drinks too much and comes out with openly racist statements. The implication of that scenario is that that uncle isn't saying it all the time. And the reason why is also implied, that he can't, that there's a huge social cost to be paid for openly revealing yourself to be an ironclad racist. And that's gone. If it's the right kind of racism. If you are racist against the right kind, if you're racist towards anyone higher than you or lower than you on the progressive stack, then your racism is applauded in 21st century society. And that is the element that has changed since Jonathan Franzen's last novel. It is now entirely socially permissible for critics, for editors, for commentators online to be openly racist, to say, well, yeah, he writes pretty well for a white guy, when those same people would know exactly who and what they are if they said he writes pretty well for a black guy. The point that it is absolutely useless to try to make in the 21st century is that those two things are the same. It is useless to try to tell people, people who ironically or non-ironically call themselves social progressives, it's useless to try to tell them that two wrongs don't make a right. An age-old moral precept that your grandmother taught you that is absolutely true. Two wrongs don't make a right. You don't prove how non-racist you are, how anti-racist you are, to use the racist Ibram Kenzie's formulation. You don't prove how anti-racist you are by being racist to someone else. That just proves that it proves the allure. Certainly, it proves the allure. If there's one thing we're seeing in the 21st century, it's that the allure of all the rotten stuff, the sexism, the racism, the authoritarianism, the dark lure of all of that rotten stuff, we're seeing that it's every bit as potent now as it ever was. It's just that what the left likes to refer to as the discourse has been warped to accommodate it. And I don't think that Jonathan Franzen's PR people are aware of that. I'm sure that Franzen himself is not aware of it, that he is publishing a big, ambitious novel, a literary novel, leather elbow patches on the suit coat, literary novel, at a time when the zeitgeist has changed to such a point that Jonathan Franzen, simply by being alive, is evil. I don't think that he knows anything about that. Certainly, Crossroads has no hint of that whatsoever. It feints in some directions like that, but only because of what Franzen has watched slightly pixied late at night on TV news shows, not because he actually understands the breadth of the problem. So I don't know. On the one hand, he, I think, is drastically out of step with the virulent racism and misogyny, or misandry, if you want to use the manosphere term for it, a blanket hatred of men. If you have ever said, just commonly, complacently, just in ordinary suburban book club conversation, oh, men can't write, then you have said Jews can't write. You have said black people can't write. And you don't think you have. So I don't think that Jonathan Franzen is aware that that is the world that he is publishing in, which means that he is out of step. But Whether or not I'm right about that, I am certain that his fiction is not aware of that, which means, crucially, lethally, that his fiction is out of step. Which is bad. That is one of the out of step, oddly anachronistic. It's one of the kindest phrases I think you could use on Crossroads. But I have not been tapped by any editor to review it, and that is wise. That is very wise. We shall see. I think it's an excellent signpost of what I'm talking about, that the Harpers from 7 years ago, or the Nation from 7 years ago, or whatever, would have absolutely trumpeted from the rooftops that they had a full-length review of the new Jonathan Franzen novel. I think the Nation, or maybe it was the New Republic. Actually, I have them right here. Who was it? Who did this? It was one of these two. Amazon, George Packard, The Chair, Sally Rooney, Humane. No, okay, so it was the Nation. It must have been the Nation. So let me just pardon me while I check here, because it's kind of interesting. No, it doesn't appear to be either one of those. Well, we saw on this channel in periodicals one large review of the Franzen novel before this Harper's one. And that one that we saw was, as far as I know, the first mainstream review of the Franzen novel that had been done anywhere. This novel is going to get reviewed everywhere. But you'd think that a venue that had run the first one would trumpet that. You'd think that all venues that had a full-length review of this major novelist writing what will de facto be a major book would trumpet it, and they're not. They're hiding it. They're ashamed of it. They've commissioned the pieces. They have to run them. But the zeitgeist has completely changed to the point where Jonathan Franzen is committing a moral outrage simply by existing, much less by publishing a book that has even one white character in it. So we shall see. I will be interested in watching how this plays out. I have a feeling that the major newspaper venues, the Times, the Post, and the Journal, will ignore the zeitgeist problems. My one outlying guess would be that if they don't ignore them, the Post will respond to those zeitgeist issues by not reviewing Franzen, or by giving him a small offhand review. But I'm pretty sure that the Times and the Journal will give it elaborate lengths of space. But that's the main thing that I found of interest in this issue, was just I'm making a little folder, a clip file of Franzen reviews for this book. But anyway, in addition to that, we also have packages. So just in case you were wondering if the diatribe was over. The diatribe is over unless one of these books sparks a new diatribe. And these are both boxes. I don't know if more mail is coming. Probably it is, but oh, fancy schmancy. This is wrapped inside of a box. So is this not from a publisher? Publishers never do this. Oh, well, I shouldn't say that. They do this to the very hoity-toity reviewers, to the reviewers who are at the highest, most important venues. They don't ever do it to a junkyard dog like yours truly. That never happens. I'm not one of those reviewers. The ones that the literary world waits with bated breath to find out their latest literary pronouncement. Oh, no, wait. No, this is from a publisher. This is just two... What is this? Oh, how interesting. I don't think this has ever happened before. We've opened 1 million books on camera on this channel. I don't think this has ever happened before, where I got the advanced copy and the finished copy together in one package. I think that's the first time this has ever happened. This comes out in early November. This is by Peter Ho Davies, and it is The Art of Revision, The Last Word, in the advanced copy and the finished copy. So the exact same thing, except that the advanced copy has the pub date on the spine. Otherwise, they're identical. And I don't have any paperwork on this, but I know what this is. Let's see. This is the Art of series. The Grey Wolf. Is it Grey Wolf? Yes. Yes. Grey Wolf does the Art of series of books called The Art of. That some of which I've liked. The Art of Subtext by Charles Baxter. The Art of Time in Memoir by Sven Virkits. The Art of History by Christopher Bram. And now the art, there are quite a few of them, and the latest one is The Art of Revision. So what have we got here? Although revision is essential to writing, readers only see the final draft, leaving the practice shrouded in mystery. Peter Ho Davies addresses this invisibility by examining his own work, alongside classic and contemporary authors, while also reaching beyond literature to film adaptations and retconning. And a story about his father, told and retold across the book, serves as an impetus for the exhilarating conclusion that it is not just the writing, but the writer who must change. And you can see right from that, this book is attempting to push me towards more ranting. Since calling on someone to change is both sexist and patriarchal. It is completely racist. You are canceled if you do it. Which is why, I would argue, most contemporary writers of contemporary literary fiction don't revise. Because who can tell them to revise? If they think on their own to revise, then that means they're ashamed of their own story. My own truth. My own truth is what they refer to it as. And if someone else, God forbid, someone else, like at an MFA where they're paying thousands of dollars to be emotionally validated every hour of every day, if a teacher at an MFA program were to say, well, this is quite bad, it needs extensive revision, and here's how it needs revision, that person would be canceled and fired within the week. There'd be mass protests on campus. You asked me to change something that I've written. You asked me to change my truth. Why must you always muzzle me? That sort of thing. So you young people who are watching this video are going to grow up in an era in which fiction at least, probably lots of nonfiction as well, especially memoirs, but fiction at least, you're going to grow up in an era in which it's not edited, in which that job just doesn't exist anymore, and which it's never revised. Because I was writing my truth. I'm not going to revise my truth. I'm not self-hating. So we shall see. Like I mentioned yesterday in my Brattle Haul, I love books about writing. Just love them. It always reminds me of a stillborn urge of mine to do lots of AuthorTube content on this channel. Every time I make an AuthorTube, a writing style video of some kind or other, a lot of you like it, and I love doing it. I have written my whole adult life. I have taught writing many, many times in many venues. I love to do it. I love to talk about it, but I don't make those videos. I'll have to address that. Sit down with myself and find out what my truth is on the subject. But then we have another box as well. I promise, just unilaterally, preemptively, I promise this one will not occasion a rant. Instead, we'll just talk about the book. We won't talk about modern woke politics at all. This is a bigger box, and it's a heavy box, so it could be a finished copy, which is always good. Finished copies are always good. It's a big book, whatever it is. Oh, yes. Okay, this is from Cambridge University Press. I have been waiting for this, and as I mention all the time that my mail hauls are often dictate my TBRs. I often read what I get in the mail. That is certainly true here. Oh my. This is by Robert Morstein Marks, and it is Julius Caesar and the Roman People. A huge new study of Julius Caesar. It's not often. It's very seldom, in fact, when I'm doing the mail on this channel. This is what? Well, it's 85 degrees and 95% humidity, so it doesn't feel like the end of September, but it is the end of September. Technically, it is the end of September. The forecast is for temperatures in the mid-80s for the next 170 days, or maybe it was 170,000 days. I forget what Tiffany on the morning news said. I forget the length of days that she said, because all I could remember was her repeating the lie of every mainstream meteorologist that I watch anywhere on any channel, which is saying that mid-80s temperatures is normal for autumn in Boston. It's not. It's not. It might be the new normal, but it's not normal. But anyway, it is technically almost October, which means we've gone through a lot of books this year. Not nearly as many as we did before COVID, but still a lot of books. And it is very rare that I will get a new book in the mail that I know is not only a keeper, but something that's going in the little book room. And this, I have a strong suspicion, is one of those things, unless it stinks. And I don't see how it could. I have a feeling that it's going to be excellent. The last book that I felt that about was The Annotated Mrs. Dalloway, where I got it and knew that I was going not only to keep it, but to put it in the little book room. So let's see what we have here. Julius Caesar and the Roman People from Cambridge University Press. So could this be the first wide distribution but scholarly treatment of Julius Caesar in, I don't even know how long it's been. I don't even know how long it's been, and not at this length. Let's find out. Let's find out what this is. Julius Caesar was no aspiring autocrat seeking to realize the imperial future, but an unusually successful Republican leader who was measured against the Republic's traditions and its greatest heroes of the past. Catastrophe befell Rome not because Caesar or anyone else turned against the Republic. Okay. All right. So when he led his armies. Anyway, let's see. But because Caesar's extraordinary success mobilized a determined opposition that ultimately preferred to precipitate civil war rather than accept its political defeat. Based on painstaking reanalysis of the ancient sources in light of recent advances in our understanding of the participatory role of the people in the Republican political system, a strong emphasis on agents' choices rather than structural causation, and a deep skepticism toward the facile determinism that often substitutes for historical explanation. This book offers a radical reinterpretation of a figure of profound historical importance who stands at the turning point of Roman history from republic to empire. I don't know what a lot of that phraseology means. Facile determinism that often substitutes for historical explanation. The Republic turned on Julius Caesar because in order not to be decommissioned and therefore have to pay his debts and also maybe go on trial, he was willing to wreck the Republic. Me over the Republic. I come first. I will not flee into exile like so many people have done before me. Instead, I will take the road of Marius and Sulla. I come before this whole thing that gave birth to me and nurtured my family. I come before all of that. And if that looks like it might give me a bad day, I'll march my armies across the Rubicon to Rome. I will march my armies onto Roman soil. I will discard all of my oaths and make myself ruler, king, in all but name. So it's not, what is it again? Oh, I'm already blocking it out. Facile determinism. To say that sometimes history is really easy to determine. Sometimes why things happen is really easy to determine. So this is going to be a sympathetic portrait of Julius Caesar. Oh, wow, that is amazing. All right, well, how does this... Well, first of all, let's take a look at what we have here. I know some of you are going to be interested in this, maybe not many. Huge appendices. A large section on works cited. Look at that. That looks boring, I know, to a lot of you, just columns of numbers and figures, but that is mother's milk to me. That means this is a serious thing. Then see, this is what old friends of mine always say. Old friends of mine always used to poke fun at me because I get a book like this, whether I find it in a used bookstore or I get it in the mail, and I immediately turn to the back instead of the front. I turn to the back, but I am turning to the back to see how serious this is. And I'm noticing tons and tons of scholarly works cited here. Tons and tons, and none that aren't, and plenty in, I'm counting 4 languages by now. And that's the reason that I turn to the back of books like this, is because turning to the back of the book lets me know almost immediately whether or not the author is going to waste my time. And this author is clearly not. This author is, and that's bad. In a way, that's bad. Because if this book turns out to be as sympathetic to Julius Caesar, who was autocratic down to his DNA, as it seems to be, then the fact that the author knows what he's talking about is going to annoy me even more. And there are also appendices that answer specific questions at length without burdening the main text with them. Okay, so how does this... Now we'll go to the beginning. Who is the author? Robert Morstein Marx is a professor of classics at the University of California, Santa Barbara. He is the author of Mass Oratory and Political Power in the Late Roman Republic, also from Cambridge. So he has studied this period in depth. Hegemony to Empire, the development of the Roman Imperium in the East. And also he's a co-editor of A Companion to the Roman Republic. Okay, so we are going to argue. We're going to argue rather a lot. Okay, so how does it start here? Okay, his acknowledgments start with an acknowledgement of how long a book like this takes to write. My elder son was in middle school, I believe, when he asked me in all innocence whether my book on Caesar was done yet. He is now entering his senior year of college. I can at last reassure him that it is done. But how does the book start? What new and true can possibly be said about Gaius Julius Caesar? A fair question. Even if one were to take a parochial view of the scholarship, for much of the most important work has been published in German. No fewer than 4 full-scale English-language biographies were published by top-ranked scholars between 2006 and 2009, not to mention a weighty and worthy companion to Julius Caesar, also published in 2009, 2 interesting introductions pitched mainly to undergraduates and the general reader in 2015 and 2016, and now 2 book-length studies that emerged in 2017 and 2019 on the coming of the Civil War. A companion to the writings of Julius Caesar and a new companion of his works with contextual essays covering a wide range of issues, historical, biographical, and historiographical, have recently appeared as well as an entire book devoted to Caesar's first consulship. And we saw a couple of those books on this channel, including the landmark Julius Caesar, which is one of the collections of Caesar's writing with ancillary articles that he's referring to here. The landmark Julius Caesar is amazing. An amazing book on Julius Caesar. I have a feeling this is going to be as well, but oh my, the cost I'm paying for being in this kind of scholarly company is in this case mighty high. There's nothing mysterious and nothing deterministic about what Julius Caesar did. He said, that thing, that huge superstructure to which I owe everything, is less important than I am. And if I need to wreck it and remake it as a monarchy with myself as the whole state, then I'm going to do that. It wasn't a new decision on his part. Like I mentioned, people that he knew and was connected to by family and blood and whatnot had done it before him. Marius and Sulla, the 2 most recent examples in living memory of men who decided, I am more important than all of this. I'm going to wreck it and take control of it. Julius Caesar was just the first one who he was smarter than Marius and Sulla put together. But that doesn't make him... We shall see. We shall see what we shall see. I wonder what... it's right on the tip of my tongue what this portrait is on the cover. Oh, right. Okay. Yes, this is in the Berlin Museum. Some scholars have disputed the identification, authenticity, and both. Looks like him to me. So there you go. Wow. Well, okay. This thing is due in early November. I kind of thought this might be commandeering my TBR for tonight, but no, no. Instead, there's this thing. So those of you who are really interested in Roman history, I think my instincts tell me this is going to be a book you're going to have, even though I imagine it's going to be brutally expensive. It's an academic press. Cambridge is an academic press, so they usually don't print their prices on the book. And the price is not printed on here. I wonder if it's on the invoice. Yes, it is. Okay, yes, it is. This is $60. New, this is $60. So that's no small chunk of change. That's a lot of money for a book. But, the number of books like this, there's the landmark Julius Caesar, there's the last generation of the Roman Republic, there's the Emperor in the Roman World, there's the Roman Revolution. The author's introductory note there about how many books have been written about Julius Caesar in the last 20 years is apt, but the ones that reach a certain level of just ice-pick sharp scholarship, those aren't as common as you would think in book form. They exist in journals all over the place, including, as the author points out, a great deal. There's been a huge amount of study of Julius Caesar and also the Julio-Claudians just in general in German that has never been translated into English, including a couple of books that are really, really good that I really wish would be translated into English, and also one long monograph on a Julio-Claudian who's not really that well known. His name was Posthumus. He was he's connected to the Augustus and the whole range of the Julio-Claudians. And those of you who have read or watched I, Claudius will probably know the character from a couple of standout scenes. He has a couple of standout scenes. One in particular in I, Claudius, where he finally says what the reader already knows, the viewer already knows, that Livia Augustus's wife is actually the evil machination behind everything that's gone wrong. He finally says that out loud, and Brian Blessed's Augustus is a great scene because the camera doesn't let us see Livia until he points at her. Then suddenly she's in the frame, just standing there, silent as a statue. And when he's finished with his long denunciation, Brian Blessed's Augustus says, "Are you mad? You'll say anything." It's just beyond the pale. It's beyond his comprehension that it could be true, even though we know it's true by that point. And there was a fairly long, or very good monograph on Posthumus in German that I really wish. I mean, there's no chance it would ever get an English language translation. There isn't the readership for it. But Julius Caesar, oh yes, his name is known. Thanks to Shakespeare, his name is known. So. This goes on the list. I don't know if I will get to Peter O. Davies. Maybe I will. But this goes on the list right away. Not only to read, but to read with pencil in hand, to read with the notes function on my iPad open for all sorts of arguing with the text. Fantastic. I'll have to figure out when this comes out. Does this tell me? This invoice that I spurned, does it tell me? No, it does not. Okay, but this has got to be soon. And all right, okay, I'm gonna wrap this up. Mainly because I'm gonna be totally distracted. I couldn't even rant about modern identitarian politics now. I'm so distracted by Julius Caesar. A big, meaty new book on Julius Caesar. Not the same thing, for all his worth. Not the same thing as, for instance, somebody like Adrian Goldsworthy coming out with a new biography of Julius Caesar, where you go right away to the back and you see from the sources cited that you know already what you're going to read in the book. This is not like that. This is a serious historian. Not that Adrian Goldsworthy isn't. This is a serious historian pitching his argument higher than that, so that this would not be for the same readership. I am its readership, so I'm going to get to that right away. I'm going to wrap this up before I just keep going on. But I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.